Welcome to the Already Collective podcast. My name is Taylor Carlier, and I'm here today with Kristin Cary. Hi, Kristin.
Hi, Taylor.
I'm so excited that you're doing this with me. Such a treat. We haven't got to, okay, well, first of all, we haven't got to talk much in the past couple of years, but we got to reconnect recently, and I love having you in my life, and I've loved all the years we've got to spend together. So I hope we get to share a little bit of that on the podcast today. So thanks for doing this with me.
Oh my gosh, Taylor, it's an honor and a joy. And I feel like we can just jump right back in where we left off.
Yeah, that's the best part, right? Is we
Mhm.
have so much history together, and God's been really kind to weave our lives in and out of each other's. And so I'm glad that He's doing it again.
Yay.
So yeah, let's tell a little bit. I'd love to tell the listeners a little bit about who you are, and then let's also tell them like how we know each other.
Sounds great. You want me to tell them who I am?
Yeah, who are
I
you?
will. Hi, I'm Kristin Cary. I part of I'm going to let you tell how you and I know each other,
Okay.
Taylor, because I feel like in my line of work, it's really important to me to allow people's stories to be their story. But
Yeah.
I have been in ministry my entire adult life. So I started out in Campus Crusade for Christ right out of college, worked overseas and on the mission field in New Mexico and various countries in Latin America. And then a terrible tragedy hit my life, and God ended up using that to shift my entire ministry focus to be helping people who struggle with unwanted sexual behavior to find freedom and helping people who've gone through sexual betrayal to find hope and healing. And that's the
Yeah.
type of ministry I have served in since 2012. And so that is kind of the real brief nugget of my ministry life.
Yeah. And your ministry is called Living Truth, and you run
Mhm.
that ministry with your husband, Michael.
That's right.
And how we got connected is I've not really told my story in full on this podcast. You can definitely go listen to the Nothing is Wasted podcast. I don't know what my episode number is, but I can put that in the show notes. I've told my full testimony story over there a couple of years back, but definitely a big piece of that puzzle was how Kristin and I got to meet each other. So a part of my family story has to do with some sexual betrayal from my father. And my mom started going to Women in the Battle, which is the program that Kristin's ministry began. At the time, it was in person. Now that's an online experience. But she began going there and finding some healing and hope for herself. And then basically begged me to go. And at the time, there wasn't really anything specifically for daughters of sexual betrayal stuff or children. But I showed up, and that's when Kristin was kind of starting some stuff for daughters. And I was a part of helping with that for many years. And I found some of my own healing and recovery in that group, and then being a part of helping lead that group. And we got to lead retreats together, and we've got to do ministry together. So that's really special and sweet to me, is that you were part of some of my own healing, but then we also got to work alongside of each other in that. So, yeah, that's how we got connected, and so that feels kind of like a lifelong connection to me. Like once you're in the trenches with someone like that in ministry, yeah, you're just always you're connected in a different way, right? In like a spiritual way that you can't really find with other people. So, yeah,
Especially in the depths of trauma
correct. Yeah.
and the darkest places of pain, which is, where we are so desperate for God
Mm,
that I feel like we're just fertile soil for new life to grow.
yeah.
And it can be the most sacred of turning points in our lives.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then when you are experiencing that with other people, that just creates a
Mhm.
deeper level of connection because because you get some of that new life together. And then I feel like we get intertwined and we grow together in that way,
Yeah.
which has always been so beautiful. So, I love if you would talk a little bit more. I know you just kind of gave some brief ministry history, but I love if you'd go back for us a little bit, Kristin. And, we want to talk to ministry leaders on this podcast and really
Yeah.
and really dive into kind of what has gotten you into ministry, what keeps you in ministry, all of the things. And so I'd love for you to share a little bit, if you can go back to kind of why you even started back in the day with ministry, got into Campus Crusade, all of those things.
Yeah.
Just journey back with us a little bit and tell us about those early days.
Absolutely. So, when I was 18 years old and a freshman in college is when I began a relationship with Jesus and got dialed into a Bible study and got really involved with the Campus Crusade ministry, now known as Cru, on my local college campus. And it was life changing for me. I felt belonging and acceptance and love from God and from a community in a way that I don't think I ever had before. So that shaped my earliest adult experiences. And by my third year of college, I knew that helping other people grow in their faith or helping other people start a walk with Jesus was my calling.
Mm,
And so I had gone on several mission trips, and that confirmed to me, like, I felt this really strong call to Latin America. And so I moved to Costa Rica right after college and did a 1 year, a little bit longer than a year, stint with Campus Crusade, and then spent the next 8 years among support raising as one of the things that I had to do in this whole journey. But I also spent about 8 years in New Mexico working with Native American and Latino college students at a university, and it was a blast. It was wonderful, and I'm learning to say more "and" instead of "but."
that's
I want to
good.
say but I knew all along the way, like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I could sustain this,
Mm,
because now I know I can look back and see all of my complex childhood trauma and how it impacted the way that I interacted with my work life in ministry. And
mm,
I can see that I was stuck in a chronic state of flight, fight, flight, freeze when we feel like we're under threat. And I think that my nervous system was so stuck in high gear that it was
mm,
hard for me to learn how to live with balance in ministry. It felt like so urgent, like there's always so many people that need help and need love and need God. And
mm.
so I would go, 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 go until I would basically go into a freeze. Like I couldn't go anymore and I would collapse. And so that was my early ministry life, and
Yeah.
then was the turning point. I'll wait and see if you have anything you wanna talk about from that early ministry experience before I
Yeah.
talk about my
Yeah,
turning
because
point.
yeah, because then things start changing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would just like to know, maybe in those early days, what were there any moments or any specific stories you can think of where you just kind of felt like heaven met earth in a moment, or you were like, "Oh, this is why I'm doing this," like a specific person or a specific moment? I'm sure there was many, but just like
Uh-huh.
because you were sold out to that and you were so bought in, like, those it feels like there has to be some things along the way that make you be like, "This is why I'm doing this."
Okay, first of all, college students are so much fun to be with.
Yeah.
It is such a cool time in a person's life where you're no longer a child, but you're not quite an adult.
Yeah.
And to be frank, like the love of God, which is present and available to every single one of us, right? As long as we are receptive and open to Him. I could feel God's love and His pleasure towards these students. And despite, all my trauma and my personal brokenness, I also had this massive capacity for love and presence. And so I have too many stories to recount, but I would be connected with these women, these young women, and the young men too, in a way where we were doing life together and doing ministry together, going on mission trips together, doing
Yeah.
such meaningful work and filled with God's joy and his
Yeah.
love, and I could feel his love for these young women. And so I think some of my most epic moments were when these women came to realize that God was calling them to serve him.
Mm.
And so many of them, like, one of my closest disciples I can think of, she went on, she did work with Crew for a while, and then she went on and married a pastor and led a church with him together.
Yeah.
And so many of these women were able to walk toward who God made them to be, like culturally,
Wow.
and the beauty of his fingerprint on who he made them to be,
Yeah.
and to express the gospel in their own culture, which to me was really important and significant because Jesus is not white.
Yeah. Newsflash.
And right, and Christianity is not Western.
Sure.
And I mean, one of my most wow moments was always when I would go home with one of my students. Like, I had some Native American students that I got to go home with them and like meet their families, meet their like see the way that their families lived and the pace of life, this very different pace of life, like a way more relational, way slower pace of life,
Yeah.
and way more dialed into connection and creation.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, here you are, God. You are so much bigger than my little world and my little way of seeing the world.
Yeah.
Too many of those memories to recount, but it was a beautiful experience.
Yeah. I mean, when you said that, Kristen, about that woman that you discipled for a while, I just was immediately in my spirit. It was just like, oh, she's always been in the business of multiplication. Like, you've always been being used by God to like multiply your efforts and not,
Mm.
it doesn't stay with you. Uh your ministry has always been a ripple effect, and I think that's really beautiful that even in
Mm.
those early days that was a part of who you were just naturally, and then you get to see that fruit, right? And not always, but I just think that that's really beautiful that yeah, you've always been in multiplication.
And not for the sake of the number, of course. It's like, I
Yeah.
mean, definitely in ministry, it can be about the results and the numbers. And for those of us who are like Enneagram threes in the room, right? It can be about performance, but at the same time, it's more about the joy of being an open vessel for God to pour love onto other people who are
Yeah.
also have capacity to be open vessels for God and
Yes.
can pour his love into others, and
Yeah.
giving people a vision for what their life could be if they
Mm.
live it in the flow of the Holy Spirit instead of self-serving, right?
Yeah.
And all about me. And of course, we're human, so we do all have some of that self-serving, all about me part. We all do, right? But
Yeah.
yes, and definitely the way that I was trained in ministry, um, in those early years affected the way that I have led in Women in the Battle and Living Truth. It definitely multiplication. You can see it in the way
Yeah.
that we do our ministry today. It's just a very different demographic, and
Yeah.
some of our methods are obviously very different.
Yeah, but I think the constant there is that I mean, I watched you do it time and time again. The goal and the purpose of your ministry was it was never for it to begin and end within the ministry, like the help and healing that they were getting. It's
Yeah.
always been like a launching pad, and and you guys do that so well. And there's many ministries that want to be self-contained and they don't want to launch and they don't want to, and so I think that that's a beautiful thing, and an important way that you lead ministry that isn't always the case. And so I think that's important to point out and applaud you for, because I mean, that's a huge deal to make it, like you're saying, it's an act of selflessness, which is really what all ministry is. And so all we're doing most of the time is fighting our own egos
Oh my goodness,
to
yes.
make it not
Yes.
about ourselves, right? And to make
Yeah.
it ultimately about God. And then we're just kind of like the humans in the way of it most of the time. So
Mm.
but yeah. Um I am trying to remember too, timeline wise. So this might be the next part of your story,
Yeah.
but I'm now remembering that the reason why my mom even came to Women in the Battle in the first place was because she was, like, supporting you as a missionary or something, I think. Back in the day, she was getting your, like, letters as you were raising support. So I don't know if that was in
Yeah.
the next part of your ministry, I think, that
Honestly,
happened.
do you know how I met your mom?
I don't know.
Okay, let's pivot here. So in 2004 was the first time I had discovery of sexual betrayal in my marriage. I was still living in New Mexico. I was with crew at the time.
Yeah.
It completely blew up my life. I was 16 weeks pregnant with my son. Um, I'm not going to go into all the details. It was traumatic and painful and difficult. We reconciled really quickly, and I started being educated about sexual addiction and infidelity and all of this.
Mm,
And I had my son. I really hoped and had vision that God would heal my marriage and heal our family.
mm,
But when my son was 6 months old, I found evidence that there was still infidelity. Well, in this case, it was pornography addiction ramping back up, which I knew was a gateway drug to actually acting out with other people. And so eventually that happened as well. And the marriage ended in divorce. And it was really traumatic. And I had tons of ministry trauma in the way the ministry handled the situation. And I'm not going to go into that detail because I've already named the ministry and I don't want to be, publicly slandering or slamming. But I mean, this is very common in the church world and ministry worlds that
yeah.
we do not know how to handle this kind of a marriage, an issue in a marriage, and assume it's a marriage problem instead of an addiction problem where the betrayed partner really has no idea this and is not enabling the behavior. But in this case, it was so traumatizing and overwhelming. And I became a single mother. So I moved back to Indiana to have the support of my family. And probably within the next 8 months, I was out shopping for furniture with my mom. Yes. Yeah, that's how I met your mom. So
I am gonna pass out.
right? My dad also passed away right after my divorce, which was also traumatic. And some of the inheritance that I got from my dad, my mom was like, "I really think you need to buy really good furniture, like a couch that's not going to fall apart and be crappy in a year." And I was like,
Oh
"Okay,
my
I'll put money
gosh.
in a couch." So we went to like a nice furniture store, and your mom
Where my
was
mom works.
exactly. That's how I met your mom. In
Chris,
2007. It would have been 2007. Yep.
that makes me wanna cry. First of all, I didn't know you must
You
have
were like
told
a
me that.
kid. You
Well,
were a
yeah,
kid.
I would have been in high school. I was in high school at the time.
Yeah.
But that makes me wanna cry, and I'm getting goosebumps at the same time because, oh my gosh, does God play the long game?
I love
Like
that. I never thought
like,
about it that way, but yes, he does.
yes. Like, he is so kind and gracious to connect you that way so many years ago, and then I mean, we didn't when I came to Women in the Battle, it was 2017, that was 10 years later.
I know.
And
Yeah.
also okay, now I could go on 10 rabbit trails now that you said that. Because also, I'm like, oh my gosh, I mean, my mom, I'm gonna have her on the podcast, she has to come on here anyways, but she has always done ministry
Yeah.
wherever she is, even when she's selling furniture, and so I get to watch her now in these later years of her life. She's doing ministry in all these volunteer positions and in her neighborhood and in all of these amazing ways, but I'm like, even when she's selling furniture, she's talking to people about, their lives and their ministries and their pain and all of these things. And then this connection is made. So,
I know.
Glenna, you are crazy and incredible.
She is. It's so crazy. I wasn't even, it wasn't top of mind that that's how I met your mom. And then
I
when you
know.
asked, I was like, actually, when I bought a couch. So
Yes.
yeah,
But
I
I
was
just
with crew
remember,
still at the time. I was with
right.
crew
I just
until
remember your
2011.
your support letters used to be on our fridge. I used to see you. That that's what I remember my mom telling me later. Is like, oh yeah, like I there was, she would send support letters when she was a missionary or whatever, but I did not
Oh,
realize you meant while she's selling furniture. Okay,
yes, that's how
crazy.
we met.
Well,
Yes.
that's derailing me, but in a good way because just how kind of God.
Yes.
Okay, so tell us about like your next phase of ministry then. What happens kind of
So
as you're
in this intermediary phase of ministry from about 2007 until 2011, most of that time I was working in a regional office for Crew, and I was the coordinator for the whole region of all of our overseas summer mission projects. So I still had this great opportunity to meet students, and I spent one of those years I got to work with international students at IUPUI doing campus ministry. I got to develop staff and disciple and mentor staff. And so that was a great role. It enabled me to do a lot of my work from home. I only had to go into the office 2 days a week so that because I was a single mom. So it was
Yeah.
a great flexible role for me. And I also started noticing that God kept putting women in my life, staff women, students, women that I would meet in the community who were dealing with brokenness in the depths of their soul, especially related to either gender, sexuality, um, uh, dealing with their own unwanted sexual behavior, or having gone through some kind of betrayal.
Yeah.
And so it basically was the organic thing that kept coming in my life, and I noticed that myself light up when I got to have those types of conversations with
Mm.
women. And I started feeling like this is more of my actual ministry, my calling. But it wasn't until my husband and I met in 2009, and I learned pretty quickly of his sexual history and quickly wanted to be like, no, thank you. Bye bye now. But God had other plans. Anyways, fast forward, and we got married in at the end of 2010, and then we started working for another sexual integrity ministry in 2011, and started Living Truth, which is our current ministry, in 2013. And so from 2011 on, my focus became this area of sexuality and
Yeah.
betrayal.
Yeah.
And that took lots of different shapes and forms. I mean, for a while we were speaking on college campuses and meeting with college students to talk to them about their concerns and their struggles and their questions in this area.
Mm.
And in the last, I would say, 5 years since COVID, my focus has become exclusively running recovery groups for women healing from sexual betrayal, and creating courses for women to heal from sexual betrayal. So those courses and the groups run in tandem. They're highly structured, like way more structured than even when you were in Women in the Battle, Daughters in the Battle.
Yeah.
And my husband runs the groups for men struggling with unwanted sexual behavior. And we have a podcast, the Living Truth podcast. It started in
Yes.
2020.
Yes, and I actually was on it back in the day.
You were probably in
I
2020 or
was
2021.
gonna say it was the early
We
days.
should link those episodes in the show notes,
Yes,
shouldn't
yes,
we?
yes. I'll link. Let me write down notes. I got more work to do here.
Yep.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, Kristen, do have such a unique story that I think is interesting to kind of like highlight and pinpoint because you started I mean, I think there's some common threads throughout all of your ministry life, but what you started in is not necessarily what you're doing now. And I think that you and Michael both are so uniquely called and positioned for this specific ministry. And it's such a niche ministry that in some ways isn't niche, right? Because of the number of people that need it, whether they seek that out or not. But it feels like you feel like such a good example of somebody stepping into what God is trying to do right now in the church and just when I say the church, the big C church.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's such an interesting, yeah, I don't know. It's just such an interesting thing that is how God has like positioned you and put you there. Like how do you like think about that? Like when you're thinking about how specific your guys' ministry is, like are you like, yeah, no, I would have never picked this, or I this is I'm like, I know this is needed, but this is, just like tell me your thoughts around how your specific lane, I guess.
Well, it's a mixed bag, right? I mean, the mission of Jesus when he started his public ministry, he stood up at the synagogue and read from Isaiah 61, right?
Mm,
And I mean, one part of Isaiah 61 is he's sent me to bind up the brokenhearted. My understanding is the word brokenhearted is better, it would be better translated into English shattered
mm,
heart. I think broken is not as severe or violent of a word of what happens to the human heart when we go through trauma.
yeah.
And I think more people are actually traumatized than they realize. More people grow up with a shattered heart as a result of traumas that they experience on repeat in their throughout their childhood. And the result of people who grow up with complex trauma, including growing up with addictions, right? Or I mean, there's so many. I'm not going to unpack all of what trauma is, but the point is, it causes our hearts to shatter, and that putting back the pieces of the shattered heart is a work that only God can do. Jesus was the one sent to do that, but let's face it, none of us wants to display to the world what a hot mess we are, how
Mm,
shattered we actually are. We don't want the world to see that part of who we are. And so it's a difficult ministry to serve in, not because I don't feel passionately about the mission, but because it's so delicate in that I mean, a lot of the people that come to us for help have a ministry background. I don't know if it's because I have a ministry background and we attract people like us.
yeah.
I have a lot of my facilitators had a ministry background, but when the stakes are so high because you're a high profile person
Yeah.
and people know who you want to hide it more. And so it's harder to
Mm,
go forward and get help
yeah.
until you're so shattered you can't even.
Yeah.
There's no other option.
Talk about that though. Talk about the importance of ministry leaders being honest about their pain in the appropriate
Yeah.
places and like seeking help. Like, why is that important?
Well, first of all, we're all freaking human beings.
That is a very good fact. Yes.
Okay. And so it's so funny because what back in the day when Women in the Battle was in person and I was just always with the women in the groups, like
Yeah.
they knew that I was a human being, like, right? But I think since we went online and I've become more public with a podcast and I have videos online and stuff, you start to think that somebody who puts stuff out there in the world must have their crap together, right?
Mm,
And the reality is we are all at various stages of being a mess, right? But we are also beautiful messes in the hands of God. And I think it's just so easy to want people to see us as having answers in order to be credible
mm.
for our ministry, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think image is a huge thing, not just in ministry, but in our society in a whole, is that we want people to think that we're more put together, more whole and solid than we actually are.
Yeah.
But people in ministry are just as susceptible, if not more. I mean, there are recent statistics about the percentage of pastors that look at porn on a regular basis. The percentage of youth pastors is even higher. And I know several years ago there was a study where 1 in 3 married Christian men admitted that they'd had sex with another woman while married. So
Mm,
that's not ministry people, that's just in general. And so the issues of infidelity and addiction to pornography and such are just as high in the church as they are outside.
yeah.
And yet we feel like this should not be our issue. I think that in Western Christianity we think things should be more formulaic in overcoming that brokenness, that Isaiah 61 should be happening upon, salvation or, quickly thereafter. And we underestimate the power of that shattered heart in our lives and the length of time it takes
Mm,
to heal. As
yeah.
if it's like more of it's not a linear journey, right? It's a very
Yeah.
complex, it's like peeling layers of an onion. It takes a lot of time. It takes
Hmm.
slowing down. It's not formulaic, that's for sure,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and we want it to be. What about your own healing process in all of this? Like, you're in many ways a wounded healer yourself, and have, like, what part of, like, you stepping into this ministry has been a part of your healing journey?
Well, first of all, I am still in therapy. Okay, just full disclosure. I still seek counseling for myself and like inner healing prayer ministry from an older, wiser Christian woman at my church. I still need that kind of ongoing work. I still regularly receive revelation knowledge from God
Mm,
about areas in which I have been either blind or numb to that were
say that.
me
Yep.
broken, living out of my brokenness.
Yep.
Okay, so um the interesting thing about stepping into a ministry of people who are traumatized, right? And so they're not acting like themselves. Their neurobiology has been totally overridden by the trauma and the threat that they're going through, and so they're not always thinking clearly. Um
Yeah.
and knowing that I that was me and has been me at various stages in my journey gives me so much compassion for these women, and knowing that what they're going through is not a just a purely spiritual issue, but it is actually whole body. It's their nervous system, it's
Mm.
everything, and has and gives me a tremendous amount of compassion for them and for me as a 30-year-old woman when I had my first discovery.
Yeah.
And for every stage along the way of how I have been a mess. So the doing a ministry that involves trauma that I've already been through has given me the gift of being triggered and feeling past pain
Mm,
today because I see it in somebody else. And then what I get to do with that is go to therapy.
yeah.
What I get to do with that is seek God for more healing. And I think there's
Mm,
a lot of us that we want it to be done
yep.
and we want to be better than that.
I would love for it to be done.
Right? I would too. I would too. Or sometimes I'm like, "Please, Lord, just a break, like a breather."
Yeah.
Right? But
Yeah.
anyways, it gives me an opportunity to get more healing.
Yeah.
So every time I experience a trigger, I'll tell you this, I very rarely get triggered by betrayal trauma stuff anymore because I've been
Mm,
doing this for so long. I get triggered in other ways, in other traumatic stuff. I feel for those of us who grow up and have a lot of childhood trauma, I think that's far more difficult because it's like in our neurobiology from the time we're really small. It's all the way our entire nervous system gets wired.
yeah. So that tends to come up for you a
Oh
little bit
yeah.
more.
Oh
Yeah.
oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean my son who I was pregnant with at the time of my first discovery, he's now 20 and he has autism and there's a lot of challenges that I've had to face with him. My husband, who
Mhm.
is amazing and wonderful and grew up with severe childhood trauma.
Mm.
And so, there's times where I get triggered by him. So
Yeah.
there's still triggers in my life and there's difficulties and there's threats and challenges in my life.
Yeah.
But the betrayal trauma piece, working with that for so long and getting the support that I need has helped me really go a long way with healing those triggers.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that you called them the gift of triggers or something like that, right? Trigger, you said gift. Why is
Most of
it a
us tend
gift?
to run away, right? We don't
Yeah.
want to be triggered. We don't want to feel that panicky threat feeling. It's a gift, and let me differentiate one thing that I think is really hard for people that are in early stages of betrayal trauma to differentiate is this a threat or is it a trigger? And a threat is something that's actively, it doesn't have to be a physical threat, right? But like, for
Mm.
example, if I discover porn on my husband's phone, that is an actual threat because there's all kinds of neurological reasons why pornography is a threat in a marriage relationship, and there's all kinds of reasons why lying and deceiving are actual threats, right? But that's not an example of a trigger.
Mm.
Sometimes people say I was triggered when really it was a threat that they were dealing with.
Right.
And a trigger is something that reminds you of a past experience but is not in and of itself a threat today. So if I am with a woman and she says something that hits a pain chord in my own story, I'm like, oh, I remember feeling like that. And then I start feeling my heart racing and I start feeling the panicky or the pit in my stomach, right? It's a gift. The reason I call that kind of a trigger a gift is because we can just go on our merry way and try to bury our past and our trauma and our difficulty or distract ourselves from it.
Mhm.
When you're face to face with it and you start to feel in your body the reactions to it, you have a choice. Are you going to run away from it? Are you going to fight, flight, or freeze
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
reaction to that trigger? Am I going to sit with it and be curious and notice what is happening?
Yeah.
And am I going to be able to soothe my nervous system, soothe those younger parts of me that are freaking out, thinking, I know what this feels like. I know what this feels like, and this is not good. We're heading for danger. Can I instead say, yes, that was terrible. Tell me more about how that felt.
Yeah.
And I can lovingly guide my own inner chaos towards safety. Because
Yeah.
today this is happening to her and it's terrible and I want to have empathy, but I don't need to hold on to that as a memory of something I went through as if I have to react to it in real time today.
Yeah. That makes
So I get
sense.
more healing. I get more healing for it.
Yeah. And that part healing is a gift, right? So that's
Mhm.
a big part of that being a gift. What would you tell, because you work with so many people in ministry like you
Yeah.
mentioned, what would you tell somebody in ministry who has just been through, and doesn't necessarily have to be sexually related, but has been through a recent trauma, and feels that pressure of what you were talking about earlier of just like needing to have it all together and make sure that other people don't know, and in some ways there's wisdom with I guess going to the right people in your trauma, and maybe not dumping it on the people that you're ministering to or your congregation if you're a pastor, or fill in the blank. But what would you, if you could think of like the first couple steps you would give them, like what would you recommend for them?
Practice the pause is my first suggestion. That can look different for different people, but our knee jerk tendency after something traumatic or a series of traumatic things may be to throw ourselves all the more into our work as a way of like it's a form of flight, right? I'm going to
Yeah.
outrun this. Or some of us may react by going into a shutdown mode, right? Which is a freeze response. And so your nervous system is doing its job, right?
Mm,
And yet we are made in God's image and we have higher level brain responses that we can have if we know what's happening to our nervous
mm,
system. And so practicing the pause would be like create enough space to feel what you need to feel revolving around what happened. You can't outrun it and you cannot distract yourself or numb yourself out
yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
Get good therapeutic support.
Yeah.
Coaches and therapists trained in whatever specialization of your issue that you're going through are essential, I really believe.
Yeah.
So, using a journal, pen to paper to write out what you're feeling and thinking can be a really good way of practicing that pause and slowing down to explore what's coming up for you and let it happen at the pace of your own nervous system rather than, I have to meet this deadline, I have to meet that deadline. So ask for what
Mm,
you need. Like if your ministry can give you a sabbatical, even if it's a few weeks, or your soul was never designed to run at the speed of our culture today.
yeah.
Spend time doing things that are grounding and regulating and help you get in the present. So putting your feet in the grass, laying on a blanket and looking at the clouds, put on dance music and dance with your kids. Anything that gets you in the moment
Yeah.
to physically get into your body can
Mhm.
help with slowing down and can counteract that tendency we might have to try to outrun or
Yeah.
fix. Sometimes we want to fix the situation when it's like, this is not fixable. I just have to kind of sit in my sackcloth and ashes and mourn it.
Hmm. Yeah, that's good. And honestly, it's just a good reminder for me and for I mean, just yeah, the day to day of just like the things that we want to. I mean, you say numb, and I know what that means, for sure. But I mean, I even think of just yeah, wanting to watch TV all the time or just, trying to make myself busy with the things that like I probably need to be doing, even if it's like laundry or dishes or whatever the thing is, just so that I'm not dealing or thinking about the things that maybe I need to be focused on. And you were always so good at teaching me about that. And I learned very early on in recovery stuff just to like go on a walk. That
Yeah.
was the best way for me that I found, that was just like the most grounding and connecting is to just go on a walk and be able to um I actually did that. I did that quite a bit this summer. I called them, this is probably not a great label, but I called them my anxiety walks.
I love it. Because then you teach yourself, when I feel anxiety, this is what I do with it. And
Yeah.
walking is one of the most accessible anxiety relief strategies ever.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it taught me, I mean, back in the day, I think we had a lot of conversations about this, but that is if anyone's familiar with like EMDR therapy, like that was how that was even like figured out, was like the eye movement that happened on walks when people would talk about things that were going on, with someone else when they were walking next to somebody and then their eyes were moving back and forth on the pavement. Like that's how EMDR was even kind of started and discovered that that was therapeutic and help release things for people. And I found that to be true for me going on walks with people. But I even for me, it's beautiful because Holy Spirit does that for me all the time. Like
Yeah.
he is my companion in that way. And so when I go on walks and I take my headphones out, because I don't always do that either, but when I go on walks and I take my headphones out and I let my eyes go back and forth on the pavement and I just process out and kind of talk with Holy Spirit about whatever the thing is I'm trying to kind of get through or get over or get beyond or just get out of my body and my head. He's so kind to meet us in those moments and I hear him speak to me even more clearly when I'm moving when that happens, right?
Same. And for people who cannot do that because they, have restrictive issues with movement, bilateral music can
Mm.
do the same thing, but you do have to have headphones for that.
Yeah, what
So
does that mean?
there's free channels on YouTube. This is not faith-based. It's called Destined Dynamics is the channel that I've used on
Interesting.
YouTube. And you have to use headphones in order to get the bilateral stimulation, but there's different tones that go back and forth. I've tried to find good stuff on like Apple Music and I can't. But
Hmm.
Destined Dynamics on YouTube, I think is really, really good. And it just helps stimulate both sides of the brain. You can also like do that while you're doing a butterfly hug. So
Tell
cross
the
your
listener
arms.
what you're doing.
Oh yeah, they can't see. So take your hands and cross them in front of your body and you can
Yep.
put like I'm putting my right arm on my left shoulder or you can do it on your collarbones and my left arm on my right and tapping on alternating sides,
Mm.
which is a form of bilateral stimulation, right?
Yeah.
And you can
Yeah.
do that with listening to bilateral music. That's an accessible way for people who have restricted movement issues
That's so
to
smart. You're so
self-soothe.
smart, Kristen. How do you keep all of this in your brain?
Well, I honestly, this is the tune that I sing every day,
True.
in the work that I do, like a lot one of the main foundations of my work is learning about your nervous system and how it gets hijacked by
Yeah.
trauma
Yeah.
and teaching women how to regulate their nervous system and regulate that fight, flight and freeze response so that they can
Yeah.
think more clearly. Because if you can regulate your nervous system, you can hear God better. You
Yeah.
can think more
Say
clearly,
that. Say that. Yeah.
right? Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, Kristen's the one that taught me to, like, punch a pillow, so
Right, because how many Christians, especially women, think that anger is a sin, right?
Yeah.
And that we have to restrict it. And the question is, how do we channel it? How do we
Hmm.
channel anger is a normal part of if we cut off our anger, we're going to cut off part of our grief process, and you cannot heal without going through the grief process. Jesus turned over tables in the temple, right? I mean,
Mhm,
come on.
mhm,
There
mhm,
was
mhm.
anger. Jesus had righteous anger.
Mhm, mhm. Yep, I love it. Tell me okay, I love this conversation, you're the best. Tell me about, tell me about a time maybe in recent ministry for you, where you felt like God show up in a unique way for you, or you saw, somebody or a group of women that you were ministering to, you just saw something significant happen. Like, can you think of anything that's happened
Oh,
recently?
oh yeah. Oh my gosh. So I do every couple months, I offer some free meetings for women who are not members of my Women in the Battle community. And I have a very predictable way that I run these meetings. And it it's like I say it's like magic, but it's not. It's just the way God wired us. It's the way he wired us for safe connection. And what happens when people feel safe and like they're with somebody who's glad to be with them, somebody who's not overwhelmed by them or afraid of
Mhm.
them or for them. And then when we take some time to do some grounding strategies together in a meeting, like the butterfly hug, right? Or some gentle movements that I prompt with a song, their body starts to get unstuck.
Huh.
And when they are able to be given a safe place to speak from their own experience, their own heart, not digging into a super deep trauma moment, but thinking about some time recently that God came through for them. And then they talk about it with each other in a guided format.
Yeah.
Something shifts every time. It's like clockwork. I have women come in the beginning of the meeting. They're checking in. I let them check in at the beginning using the chat window on a Zoom meeting. They're checking in afraid, overwhelmed, hopeless, just frozen, numb, etc. And every time at the end of this whole process that I walk them through, it's only an hour, but at the end, they're checking out connected, hopeful, not alone, more
Mm.
relaxed. And it's not just a spiritual shift, it's a physiological shift, it's a neurobiological shift because God did not create us just spirits. And he did not just create us as bodies. We are body, soul, spirit, heart, mind, and will all wrapped up in intertwined.
Amen.
And you have to deal with all of those separate parts of who we are and the fact that we were created for connection, but
Yeah.
trauma tends to cause us to isolate.
Yeah.
And bringing people from that place of despair to a place of connection and hope in an hour period of time, it still shocks me. Even though
Yeah.
I'm like, I know that I've seen it happen over and over and over. When it happens, I'm still like, oh my gosh, God's in the room. He's showing up and
Mm.
he loves these women. He wants to help
Wow.
them heal and give
Yeah.
them hope that they can,
Yeah.
regardless of what happens with their marriage, because we can't control what another person does. We
Yes.
can only make decisions for ourselves and
Yeah.
hope and pray that our spouse would make choices towards healing, but we can't control it.
Yeah. How beautiful though that like you have them pinpoint in that way. I think what's so like game changing about what you just said is that one of the parts of that hour is that you're just asking them like, how's God shown up for you recently? And
Yeah.
how that can just acknowledging that and paying attention to that and maybe even verbalizing that, how that rewires even in that moment our perspective. Or because I know God's been, I mean, this has just been like the drumbeat recently of my life, is he just keeps being like, no, what are you thankful for? Like, where are you seeing me already? I know you want to pray for all these other things, I know you need all these other things, but like, are you paying attention to what I'm already doing? Because I am always already doing something. And so it's interesting when you prompting the women with that question. I mean, that's such a like, that is doing what you're even saying about just almost like rewiring neurologically.
It is.
And but it's also just it's a spiritual practice, right? It's both things.
It is, and one thing I love to add to that is to say grab an article, an artifact, an object around you that
Mm.
reminds you that God loves you or that reminds you that there is hope. And so having a tangible, like I have this tear jar that my one of my facilitators sent me. And
Mm.
so it's like that verse in the Psalms that says God captures all your tears in his bottle. But
Yeah.
tear jars were an actual thing back in the day. And so when I have them grab something and I'm looking at my thing, it's very grounding and brings me in the present moment of like, oh yeah, there's this thing. And this reminds me that God captures all my tears in his bottle. I mean, Jesus used metaphors left and right all throughout scripture, right? There's metaphors all over the place. And we kind of lose that in our modern world. The tangible, the physical, the grounding into the present and the
Yeah.
connection that the physical reality of our world and creation is it's a manifestation of God's nature, of his creativity, of his
Yeah.
goodness and his greatness. And we just get so dialed into the problems we're facing. And that is
Yep.
that is a normal brain thing, right? Negativity bias. We can pull ourselves out of that.
Yeah. What are some of the examples other than your tear bottle of, like, what
Yeah.
do other women, like, tend to grab, or, like, what's a common thing?
Oh, like some of them, it's like a cross necklace or it's a teddy bear
My
that
little
is their
cross.
yes, their child's teddy bear or their
Okay.
their dog or I mean, I just say, just grab something, like, it can
Grab
be anything
grab
because
anything.
grab anything. No, but and then what do you think happens to them every time they see that object after that
Mm,
meeting?
yeah. That
It's a
becomes
reminder.
yeah, that becomes a
It's a physical,
representation.
tangible reminder
Mhm.
that God, even when you can't see it, he's at work and he is with you.
Wow.
And look at and then there's the power of looking at there's like 30 other women in this room. Look at these young women and older women and all different ethnicities, and these women have all been through betrayal. I thought it was just me. What
Yep.
does that do to the brain when you realize, "Oh my gosh, I thought it was just me. Maybe it's
Oh,
not
yeah.
me."
That was a big game changer for me for sure. So, yeah, that's a beautiful part of everything that you guys do. Okay, that's a good challenge though. I think we need to, like, I'm gonna challenge myself, but I think we need to give the listeners a little challenge to,
Yeah.
like, find something physical around them that so yeah, give your instructions, like, say it how you would say
Yeah.
it to your women, and
Okay.
then that will be what we're asking our listeners to do.
I love it. I love it. So, I want you to think of an object in your home nearby that reminds you of God's goodness, his faithfulness, and the way he has come through for you. And I want you to grab that object. And I would even urge you to like look at it, feel it. What does it feel like? What do you notice about it? You can smell it if it has a smell. This has no smell. I could put oil
Smells
in
like
it,
tears.
right? Salty.
Smells salty.
No, but like notice it and then so this is not as effective, right? Because the listeners they're listening to this solo. But my
Uh.
challenge to you, listener, would be if you could tell somebody that this was an assignment that you got from Taylor's podcast and share it with somebody that you love. So I would take my little tear jar and say, hey, this is a tear jar. And this reminds me that God loves me and he's with me and he captures all my tears in his bottle. And this is why this is significant or important to me.
Yeah.
In my group meetings, Taylor, what I do is I have a woman share her thing in like a minute or so. I tell her, you don't have a lot of time. We've got 6 minutes in this room. There's 3 of you in the room. You just have about a minute. Then I have the other 2 women reflect back to her. What did you hear her say? And what hits you from what she said? What's meaningful to you about what you heard her say? Because
Yeah.
we do so much talking in our world and not enough listening and hearing one another. And
Yeah.
being heard when you feel like your voice has been stripped away from you or you have to remain silent about something you're going through,
Mm.
we all have to be heard.
Yeah. Yeah, so
So,
that's an even a good practice then in that if they're gonna take that to somebody, also
yeah,
ask them to reflect back to you what
exactly.
you say to them and then do the same for them, and that's what a beautiful exercise. I love it, Kristen. Thank you for doing that.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been so good. I love you. I'm so glad that we got to talk. Tell our listeners where they can follow you and make sure they stay up, hear all the other smart things you have to say in this world.
Well, my website is living-truth.org. And that's a great way. If you are interested in more information about women in the battle or men in the battle, which is the program my husband runs, you can find links to those on there. You can also find links to my podcast, the Living Truth podcast. And then, I mean, we can share all of my socials
Yes.
in your
I'll put
show notes.
all of it in the show notes, yes,
Yeah.
yeah, and you can follow The Already Co. at The Already Co. on Instagram and on our website, thealreadyco.com, and I did launch a YouTube page that I haven't talked about, so you can see all of these podcast episodes on YouTube at The Already Collective, so, go check all of that out. Thank you so much, Kristen, for doing this, and, let's continue to live like the kingdom of God is already here because it is.